many hours have you spent practicing English this week? 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours? That's actually not bad for an adult, but just today, my 3-year-old son practiced English for 10 hours. And in 2 years, when he's 5 years old, he will have been in contact with the English language for almost 20,000 hours. That's enough hours to fill up a swimming pool, according to this AI-generated image. Today we are going to examine the 7-step method that you probably used as a child to learn your first language, and that we can steal and use as adult learners. These are specific activities that I have observed my 3-year-old son doing all day, every minute, to one day become a fluent English speaker. These activities are all easy and super simple. A 3-year-old can do them. They are also natural. They are not classroom activities. This is just what children do naturally to learn their first languages, and sometimes their first, second, and third languages as well. I'm going to give you some additional tips to make these activities more interesting, of course, because we are adults and we need more interesting and cognitively stimulating language practice than children do. Obviously, yes, my son has an advantage with me at home speaking to him in English. He's also learning French from his dad, who is a native French speaker. But with a solid plan in place and with the right motivation, research shows us that you can learn English just as quickly, actually much more quickly than a child, even without an English-speaking mom reading you bedtime stories every night. And if you watch until the end of this video, you're gonna find out what's in this super secret box, a special bonus tip for learning English naturally that many bilingual families use in their own homes. So I'm just gonna set this down here and let's get started. Please note that you do not necessarily have to do these 7 steps in this exact order. We all learn differently and we all have different preferences. Think of these 7 steps more like 7 tools in a toolbox that you can choose from depending on the situation, your needs, and your own personal preferences. You've probably heard of the shadowing method in English. This is when you repeat a sentence that somebody else has said, trying to copy the exact stress and rhythm and intonation in order to practice your pronunciation.
Where is everybody? They took Ben to the park.
Where is everybody? They took Ben to the park.
Where have you been?
Where have you been?
Just out.
Just out.
Had some lunch.
Had some lunch.
Just me. Little quality time with me.
Little quality time with me. It's not complicated, but it is possible to do it wrong or in a way that is just not as effective. Children, from the time they are really little babies, love to repeat after adults, love to copy, mimic, parrot adults. My son mimics me and my husband all the time, but the way that he does it is so interesting and so effective. The key here is exaggeration. When my son repeats what I say in English, or when he repeats what my husband says in French, he sounds like he is exaggerating. He sounds really over the top, as we say in American English. He almost sounds like a comedian, like he's making fun of us, like he's mocking us. He makes us laugh because it's just so accurate. It's funny because it's true, basically. For example, in American English, we often use the sort of question tag, huh? So for example, oh wow, it's a really hot day, huh? Or, oh, that teacher is really nice, huh? This ice cream is really good, huh? To be honest with you, I didn't even realize how much I said this word or this sound until my son started repeating after me, saying this exact thing, but in a very exaggerated way. He'll say something like, oh, it's time to take a bath, huh? To me, it sounds very exaggerated, but, you know, in a way, it's kind of how I actually sound. He really goes for it, he really commits, and he sounds very accurate. Even if it sounds kind of silly to me or it makes me feel a little bit embarrassed, he's doing it really well. When most students do shadowing exercises in English, I feel like they don't really commit to the role. They often don't quite get the stress or the intonation or the rhythm correct. And that's because mimicking someone or shadowing someone is not only about the words that you're saying, it's also about copying, capturing the feeling and the energy of the person who is speaking. Be really over the top, and you might surprise yourself and you'll probably sound much more accurate. This one is really important. My son is entering the stage where he asks questions constantly. He doesn't always ask the questions in a grammatically correct way. In fact, he makes a lot of mistakes when he's asking questions. So here are some of the questions that he has asked me lately that I wrote in a note on my phone to share with you. I'm sure he won't mind. He said to me, this is very recently, "Do you hungry? Mama, do you hungry?" Instead of, "Are you hungry?" He said, "What you maked? What you maked?" When he meant to say, "What did you make? What did you make?" He asked me, "Where is him? Where is him?" When he meant to say, "Where is he? Where is he?" He asked me, "What he doed? What he doed?" When he meant to say, "What did he do?" Even though he makes many mistakes, I can still understand him and I can still have a conversation with him and give him the information that he is asking about. So don't be afraid to ask questions of other people who speak English and of your teachers. If you don't have someone to speak English with, don't be afraid to ask questions online, in YouTube comments, in online forums, and just don't be afraid to ask questions even if your English is not perfect, even if you cannot find the perfect way to ask the question. It's okay. When you were a child, did you have a favorite movie or video that you used to watch over and over and over again? For me, it was The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. Tell me yours in the comments down below. Children love repetition. They can watch the same movie or video again and again and never get bored. This helps them greatly in learning new vocabulary, grammar in context, cultural references, and in teaching them what correct pronunciation sounds like. But for most adults, watching the same movie 100 times would probably make us want to jump off a bridge, unless it's a movie that we really, really love. However, we can use the same principle to practice English in a fun and effective way. First, think of a book, a series, a movie, a video game, anything that you love. It should be in English, but it can also work in your first language if there is an English translation of it. I'm going to use the popular book, The Three-Body Problem, as an example here, just because it was such a big hit on Netflix this year. So if I type into ChatGPT this prompt, what are some different formats in which I can read, listen to, or watch content related to the three-body problem? Please provide detailed author and title information and websites where I can learn more. You will see here that there are so many formats of this story available to consume. So you can read the series of novels, you can watch the series on Netflix, you can watch fan-created fiction about the story, you can listen to podcasts about the story. It's the same story, but you're examining it in different formats from different angles. A powerful skill that is emphasized in a lot of education systems is called paraphrasing, which means to say something that you have learned, to explain something that you have learned, but in your own words or in a different way. Being able to explain something in your own words is often thought of as the gold standard of having really learned something. It shows that you really understand a particular topic. American theoretical physicist Richard Feynman said, "If you want to master something, teach it. In a way, we can think of paraphrasing as teaching something because we are reformulating it in our heads and spitting it out in our own words. Even if you're not really teaching someone for this example, I think it helps to think of it as teaching something, conveying information to someone in your own words. There's a useful model called the learning pyramid, which was developed by American educator Edgar Dale, which theorizes different stages of the learning process. This was not designed for language learning, but I still think it's an interesting visualization for us. You'll notice that the most important exercise for learning something is teaching it. Through the process of teaching something, putting it into your own words, you really start to understand it well. Let's talk about how children do this and what exercises that you can use to paraphrase/teach something. Sometimes my son watches cartoons, and cartoons can be a little bit annoying for the adults. And so we will turn the volume down really low or even put it on mute, absolutely silent. And I've noticed sometimes when we do this, my son will continue to watch the cartoons, but he will narrate the story out loud to himself or to the other people in the room. Children are so creative and such amazing language learners. They take any opportunity, every opportunity there is to practice speaking the language that they are hearing around them. My son also does the same thing with books that he reads. Because he has heard a story so many times read to him, sometimes he'll pick up a book and he'll read it out loud to himself because it's memorized. So, a couple ways that we can use this principle as adult learners. Record yourself with your phone reading something out loud, reading from a book, or reading the news in English. And then, this is painful, but I want you to listen back to yourself. You will notice all of your pronunciation errors. It'll be hard to listen to yourself at first. It's really hard for me to do this with my own language learning practice, but it's so useful. We are with ourselves all day long, and so it's really important for us to become good at self-assessing, at hearing our own mistakes and fixing them. Sometimes we think that our pronunciation is great, and this is a little bit like when we're singing in the shower. Sometimes we think our singing voice sounds wonderful in the shower, but our family tells us afterward, your singing was terrible, because they can hear us really clearly outside the shower. We're not able to hear our own voice in our heads as clearly as we think we can. So take the jump, record your voice, reading something, and just do a very honest self-assessment. Another fun activity or fun little exercise you can do on your couch is watch your favorite TV series or watch your favorite movie in English with the English subtitles on, and turn the volume down really low, and then read the subtitles of the dialogue out loud and record yourself doing this. And again, listen back to yourself. Be kind to yourself, especially when you first start doing this exercise, because it's not easy. Just FYI, my son makes tons of mistakes when he does this exercise, or his version of this exercise. He makes lots and lots of pronunciation mistakes and grammar mistakes, but it doesn't matter because he is practicing and he is adjusting his ears and his mouth, and little by little he is becoming more and more fluent in English. How often do you sing out loud in English? Often? Sometimes? Never? Children love to sing from a very young age. Children are very connected to songs and music, even if they don't understand the words that they are singing. In fact, if you look closely at many popular or traditional children's songs and rhymes in English, the words are often very, very strange. Many traditional children's songs are very old, and so they contain outdated English words and expressions that even adults are not familiar with. Maybe this is what happens in children's songs in your culture as well. Let me know. Children sing these songs not really understanding the meaning, and in this way, they practice their pronunciation. There is a man named Gabe Weiner who wrote a best-selling book called Fluent Forever. about how he taught himself how to speak 6 languages. Weiner actually started his career as an opera singer. His first major role was as an opera singer in a French opera, completely in French, but he did not speak a word of French. He did the entire role just phonetically, memorizing the sounds of the language. He eventually did learn French later on in his life, and I wonder if doing so much singing in French first helped him with the pronunciation later on when he was learning it for real. Try singing your favorite songs over and over again in English while following along with the lyrics. Many apps such as Spotify allow you to do this easily. There are also thousands of popular songs with the lyrics available on YouTube. Simply search for the song or artist plus lyrics or karaoke version. In addition to pronunciation, songs can also help you to learn and practice vocabulary words and to become more familiar with grammar in real life and not just in boring exercises or textbooks. As I've said before on this channel, grammar is more fun when you're singing it. Have you ever had this experience? You're trying to fall asleep, but you keep thinking of conversations that aren't real, that didn't really happen. Maybe you're inventing a conversation in your head between you and your boss, and you make the conversation so vivid in your mind that you actually become a little bit angry or sad. This is strange, but it's actually a great tool that we can use in our English practice. My son creates dialogues, conversations with his toys all the time. He has full-on conversations with them. Of course, like I said earlier, he is still young and so he makes a lot of mistakes still when he speaks, but that's a good thing. So back to those conversations that you're having in your mind. Step 1, continue to have those conversations, but try to imagine having them in English. Step 2, if you really want to take this to the next level, practice writing the conversation and then reading it out loud. If you want, ask ChatGPT to create a conversation for you and then practice reading it out loud. A prompt you could use could be, please write a typical American English conversation between 2 people. Make it a casual conversation between friends on the topic of shopping, for example. Here is a question that I guarantee my son never wonders about and never asks himself. Will I learn English? Or will I become fluent in English? Or when will I become fluent in English? What will my English level be in 6 months? Children are not ever thinking about the result of their practice. They simply do the work every day. They never worry, they just do. So if you are feeling stuck and anxious and you feel like you don't have enough time to practice English or you're not improving quickly enough, I would give you 2 pieces of advice that are actually from my son. Do not make goals that look like this, for example. Reach level B2 in 3 months. Instead, make a goal that looks like this. I'm going to watch videos in English for 1 hour every day for 3 months. Do you see the difference here? The goal that we want to have puts the focus on the process, just like a child does, and not on the end result. Here's another example. Don't make a goal like, I'm going to read 3 books in English this month. Instead, make your goal focused on the process instead of the results. So for example, I'm going to read in English for 20 minutes every day. When you don't make the result your goal and instead make the process your goal, it gives you a lot more control over your goals, just like a child. Even my 3-year-old has a lot of control because he focuses on the process and not the result, just naturally. Children just do this naturally. Okay, and number 2, little tip here, take 1 hour of your day, maybe like the beginning of the month, and make a big Excel spreadsheet or Word document with like 30 items on it. This should be a list of YouTube videos, articles in English, Netflix series, podcasts, anything that you think is interesting in English that ideally has a link to it so you can just click it and go. Take 1 hour to make this big list for yourself so you never have to sit there and wonder, what am I going to study today in English? What am I going to watch? You never have to waste any time, any precious studying time. This is how kids practice. They take advantage of every moment that they have to watch something, to listen to something, to speak. They don't waste any time, any precious time that they could be using learning their language. Okay, and now for the special bonus tip in the box. In our bilingual family, we use a popular technique called OPOL, O-P-O-L, and this basically means that I speak to my son in English and my husband speaks to our son in French. And so hopefully my son becomes bilingual. But of course, this strategy doesn't work for every bilingual family. And so there is another strategy called, this is just some of my son's toys, called time and place. This means that you associate a time or a place with a certain language. For example, maybe your family speaks English only in the bathroom during bath time and then speaks French in the rest of the house. Or maybe your family speaks English on the weekends and Spanish during the week, for example. You can try setting up your life like this as well. Start small. So for example, label your kitchen, just your kitchen, with a bunch of English vocabulary post-its. And when you're in your kitchen, that is your English language zone. You can narrate your life in English, speak to yourself in English, cook in English, talk to yourself in English as you cook. Or you can use time. So for example, after 6 p.m., that's English time in your house. So you only watch shows, movies in English, you only listen to English music. If you live with someone who's also practicing English, you only speak English after 6 p.m. For example, this introduces a bit of discipline to your English language practice. Don't be afraid to experiment and change the rules as you figure out what works for you and your lifestyle. My son is a much more successful language learner than I am, but it's not because of any of these exercises, actually. I think I'm pretty decent at doing many of these exercises in my language learning practice as an adult. However, he's better than me because of his amazing mindset, which is probably like 90% of learning English or any language. To truly master the mindset of a child, watch this video next. I'll see you guys soon.